The first words hit Nassau before the can smoke did. "The king will forgive you." That was the sentence a pirate heard in 1718. Not from a preacher, not from a begging merchant, from the crown. From the same empire that had promised to hang him if it ever got a rope around his neck. "The king will forgive you." And that was worse than a broadside. Because a cannonball comes from outside the ship. You can see the flash. You can hear the gun. You can duck. You can fire back. A pardon does something uglier. It walks into the tavern. It sits at your table. It drinks beside you. It gets into the head of the man sleeping 3 feet away from your hammock. Maybe he is tired. Maybe he wants dry land. Maybe he wants a wife. Maybe he wants a shop. Maybe he wants to stop waking up with a noose in his future. Or maybe he wants to save his own neck by handing over yours. Now imagine Nassau in the Bahamas in July 1718. New Providence Island is not the vacation postcard you know today. No cruise ship crowd, no clean resort beach, no beach bar playlist. Nassau is rough, hot, hungry, armed. It is a pirate town with a harbor full of sloops and stolen cargo. It is the closest thing the Atlantic has to a criminal capital. Men who used to be privateers sit beside escaped sailors. Men who deserted merchant ships sit beside former Royal Navy hands. Some are killers, some are broke laborers with no honest way out. Some are young idiots chasing a legend. Some are old sea dogs who know the legend ends with chains. For years, these men have lived with one simple rule. The outside world hates us. That rule made them strong. If the crown is your enemy, if the merchants are your enemy, if every governor wants your body swinging at the harbor mouth, then your crew becomes your country, the ship becomes your law. Trust is not pretty, it is survival. Then King George I offers the act of grace, a royal pardon. Pirates who surrender before the deadline can walk away from crimes committed before a certain date. They can keep some of what they stole. They can stop running. The crown will call them forgiven men. That sounds generous until you understand the trap. The pardon did not just offer mercy, it created a choice inside every pirate crew. And once that choice existed, the old brotherhood was already poisoned. One man hears freedom, one man hears a lie, one man hears a temporary loophole, and all three are standing on the same deck. This is the part pirate movies almost never get right. The end of the Golden Age of Piracy was not only bigger warships chasing smaller ships. It was not only governors building forts and admirals sending patrols. It was not only ropes, courts, gallows, muskets, chains. The crown broke the pirates by making them look at each other differently. A pirate could fight the Royal Navy. He could not easily fight the thought that his quartermaster might take a pardon tomorrow morning. Nassau was the perfect target because Nassau was already a mess. The old colonial government in the Bahamas had become weak. The harbor was useful. The island sat close to the Florida Straits, ships moving between Spanish America, Jamaica, Cuba, Carolina, Virginia, New England, Europe. They all passed through waters pirates understood better than most naval officers. If you are building a pirate base, you want shallow inlets, you want escape routes, you want corrupt traders, you want a place where a stolen cargo can be sold fast. Nassau had that. For a while, the pirates treated it almost as their own republic. Not a clean democracy, not some noble rebel camp. Do not romanticize it too much. It was a violent harbor full of desperate men. But compared to the brutal discipline of merchant ships and navies, pirate life could look strangely fair to a sailor with nothing. Crews voted on captains, articles laid out shares. Injured men could receive compensation, captains could be removed. A bad captain could wake up one morning and find that his command had vanished. That mattered in a world where ordinary sailors were beaten, underpaid, cheated, and tossed aside. Piracy was crime, but it was also a labor revolt with cannons. That is what made the pardon dangerous. The crown was not only saying stop stealing, the crown was saying come back into the world you ran from. For some men that sounded wonderful, for others it sounded insane. The first group was the tired group. These men had seen enough. The treasure stories were mostly nonsense by then. Most pirate prizes were not Spanish gold chests. They were barrels, cloth, flour, medicine, sugar, toll, wine, rope, indigo, hides, coins. If lucky, pirates could get rich. Some did. But most pirate crews burned through loot fast. They drank it, gambled it, lost it, split it, wasted it. Then they went back out. Life at sea was filthy, food rotted, water turned foul. Fever came aboard without asking permission. A small wound could turn ugly. A storm could make a captain irrelevant in 10 minutes. One bad reef could erase a whole crew, and the noose was always there. So when the king said surrender and live, a lot of men listened. These were the pirates who looked at Nassau and did not see freedom anymore. They saw a dead end, they saw one more raid, then another, then a trial in Jamaica or Charleston or London. They had survived long enough to know survival was not the same thing as winning. The second group was the hard group. These men did not believe the crown. Not for 1 second. They had served under legal privateering commissions during war. Then peace came. The same governments that had used them now called them criminals. Merchants who once celebrated prize money now demanded protection. Governors who once looked away now wanted clean records. So when the crown offered forgiveness, these pirates smelled a trick. And honestly, their suspicion was not crazy. Governments in the Atlantic world could be flexible when money was involved. A man could be a privateer 1 year, a pirate the next, a useful witness the next. A corpse the week after that. The law moved with power. A pardon was paper. A rope was rope, so the hard group said no. Charles Vane became the symbol of that answer. When Woodes Rogers arrived at Nassau as royal governor of the Bahamas in July 1718, Vane did not line up to kiss the ring. He did not shuffle forward and ask for mercy. He turned a captured vessel into a fire ship and sent it burning toward the governor fleet in the harbor. That is not a quiet refusal. That is a man saying the pardon can burn with the ship. Vane escaped Nassau that night. The move was bold. It was also a sign of how the world had changed. He could still run, but he was running from a town that had once protected men like him. Nassau was no longer safe. The harbor had changed sides. The third group was the filthiest group. These were the men who took the pardon and then went back to piracy. They wanted the best of both worlds. A clean name when useful, a black flag when profitable, a governor stamp in one pocket, a stolen cargo in the hold. They understood that the pardon could become camouflage. That group is where the moral rot gets thick, because if a man takes the king pardon and then returns to piracy, he is not just breaking the law again. He is making every other pardoned pirate look fake. He is telling the crown that mercy is weakness. He is telling Rogers that examples must be made, and Rogers made examples. Woodes Rogers is important here because he was not some soft administrator who only knew paperwork. He had been a privateer. He had sailed around the world. He had taken prizes. He had rescued Alexander Selkirk from a Pacific island. Selkirk later became part of the inspiration behind Robinson Crusoe. Rogers knew the sea. He knew greed. He knew how crews talked. He knew pirate habits from the inside edge of legality. That made him dangerous. A sheltered governor might misunderstand pirates. Rogers did not. He knew Nassau could not be taken back by speeches alone. He needed force. But he also needed fracture. He arrived with warships. He carried pardons. He offered a way out. Then he used the men who accepted that way out against the men who refused it. That is the dirty genius of the royal pardon. It did not only remove pirates from the water, it recruited pirates into the hunt. The best example is Benjamin Hornigold. Hornigold had been a major pirate figure in the Bahamas. He had sailed with Edward Teach before Teach became Blackbeard. He had status. He had experience. He knew the channels. He knew the anchorages. He knew the men. He knew who was brave, who was reckless, who drank too much, who ran when pressed, who could be bribed, who could be trapped. Then Hornigold accepted the pardon, and after that he became a pirate hunter. Think about what that means inside Nassau. Yesterday Hornigold is part of the world. Today he works for the governor. Yesterday he shares a harbor with you. Today he may be sent to bring you back in chains. That is not just betrayal. That is intelligence warfare without the modern language. A Royal Navy officer from England might not know where Charles Vane hides. Hornigold might. A governor might not know which sloop belongs to a pardoned man pretending to trade. Hornigold might. A naval patrol might not understand why a pirate changes course near a shoal. Hornigold knows the shoal. The crown did not need every pirate to surrender. It only needed enough of them. Once enough men accepted the pardon, the pirates lost the comfort of a united front. The taverns changed first before the pardon-on pirate could walk into a Nassau drinking room and complain about governors. Merchants, Anaval officers, buyed luck, buyed food, buyed powder, buyed crew shares. Everyone understood the enemy was outside. After the pardon, every conversation has an edge. Who is leaving? Who already talked to Rogers? Who met a clerk near the fort? Who suddenly wants to visit the governor house? Who is asking too many questions about Vane? Who is asking where Blackbeard is? Who is trying to find out which men plan to sail tonight? That is how a community breaks, not all at once, not with one battle. It breaks because every normal gesture becomes evidence. A man walks away from a table. Maybe he is going to piss. Maybe he is going to inform. A man sells a pistol. Maybe he needs money. Maybe he is done fighting. A man keeps quiet during a vote. Maybe he is scared. Maybe he is counting names. This is why the pardon was scarier than cannons. Cannons kill bodies. Suspicion kills crews. The pardon split pirates into practical men, proud men, and slippery men. The practical men wanted shore. The proud men wanted the old life. The slippery men wanted to sign the paper and keep stealing. And Rogers had a different answer for each one. For the tired men, he offered a path back. For the proud men, he brought pressure. For the slippery men, he brought the gallows. John Augur shows how brutal that lesson became. Augur was one of the pirates who accepted the pardon in Nassau. He was given a chance to go legitimate. Rogers trusted him enough to let him sail on a trading voyage. That already tells you how badly Rogers needed the experiment to work. Nassau had to become normal again. Ships had to bring supplies. Men had to trade. Former pirates had to become useful. But Augur and others slipped back into piracy almost immediately. The moment tells you everything about the problem. You can pardon a man on paper. You cannot erase his habits. You cannot erase his debts. You cannot erase the crew around him. You cannot erase the fact that honest trade is slow and piracy is fast. You cannot erase the voice in a man's head that says one more prize and then I stop. That line is always a lie. One more prize, one more raid, one more easy ship, one more barrel of rum, one more chest, one more clean getaway. That is how men walked from pardon to rope. Rogers sent Hornigold after Augur, a former pirate hunting a pardoned pirate who had returned to piracy. That sentence sounds ridiculous, but it is the center of the whole story. Piracy was eating itself. When Augur was brought back to Nassau, Rogers had to prove that the pardon had teeth. Mercy for surrender, death for betrayal. That was the message. Several of Augur crew were condemned. The executions in Nassau were not just punishment, they were theater. A new government was telling every man in the harbor that the old game was over. If you surrender and stay clean, maybe you live. If you refuse, you run. If you accept mercy and then spit on it, you hang. That was the new math. And yes, that is cold. But from Rogers' view, it was necessary. If one pardoned pirate could go back to sea and get away with it, the whole pardon becomes a joke. Every pirate in Nassau would learn that the crown can be tricked. The line had to be bloody. The same pattern shows up with Stede Bonnet, the strangest rich man pirate of the age. Bonnet was not the usual desperate sailor story. He was a Barbados gentleman, a plantation owner, a man with money. He bought his own vessel, hired a crew, and somehow decided that piracy was his next career move. Even other pirates seemed to find him odd. He linked up with Blackbeard, lost control, regained some chance at respectability. Then in North Carolina in 1718, Bonnet received a royal pardon from Governor Charles Eden. That should have been the exit. The gentleman pirate walks away, goes home, starts over, maybe tells lies at dinner for the rest of his life. But no, Bonnet went back to piracy almost at once. He renamed his vessel the Royal James. He used an alias. He tried to hide his identity while keeping the benefit of the pardon. Then he captured ships along the coast. That is the slippery group again. A pardon in public, piracy in private. It failed. Bonnet ended at Charlestown, captured after a fight near the Cape Fear River, tried, hanged in December 1718. His story makes the pardon look less like a magical reset and more like a test of character, and a lot of men failed it. Blackbeard is the most famous case. Edward Teach built fear better than almost anyone. That matters because piracy often worked best when victims surrendered without a fight. Blackbeard understood theater, the beard, the weapons, the smoke, the reputation. Every detail pushed a merchant crew toward panic before the boarding even started. But in 1718, he also accepted a pardon in North Carolina. For a short time, he looked semi-retired around Bath and Ocracoke, married, settled, connected to Governor Charles Eden, a pirate with legal cover. Then the old behavior came back. By late 1718, Virginia Lieutenant Governor Alexander Spotswood treated him as a continuing threat. Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard led the expedition that caught Blackbeard near Ocracoke in November. Blackbeard died in a savage fight. His severed head was displayed on Maynard's sloop. That is the Hollywood moment people remember. But the darker part came before it. Blackbeard had already shown the central problem of the royal pardon. It could turn a pirate into a citizen only if the pirate accepted the new life for real. If not, the pardon became a mask, and masks make governors angry. Now bring that back to Nassau. By late 1718, the pirates have seen the choices in front of them. Hornigold accepts and hunts. Vane refuses and runs. Augur accepts and relapses and hangs. Bonnet accepts and relapses and hangs. Blackbeard accepts and returns to violence and dies. That is not a simple moral lesson. It is a dirty system forcing dirty men into impossible choices, because the crown was not innocent either. The empire had helped create the pirate problem. Years of war had trained seamen to attack enemy ships under legal papers. Then peace arrived and thousands of armed men were suddenly inconvenient. Some had little money, some had no future. Some had learned that violence at sea paid better than obedience. Privateering had blurred the line. Then the state tried to redraw it with a proclamation. A man who was useful in wartime became a criminal in peacetime. Pirates understood that hypocrisy. That is why some did not trust the pardon. They knew kings could change needs, governors could change policy, merchants could change stories. A paper signed today might not save you tomorrow if some powerful man wanted your neck. So do not imagine every pirate who refused the pardon was stupid. Some were proud, some were violent, some were addicted to plunder, some just understood the state too well. Charles Vane is easy to paint as the villain because he rejected mercy. But from his point of view, mercy from the crown was surrender. He had watched men profit under black flags. He had watched Nassau rise outside normal law. He had watched old captains take what they wanted. Now a governor arrives and says the party is over. Sign here. Done. Become harmless. Vane chose fire. It made him legendary for a moment. It also isolated him. That is what the pardon did. It made Vane look less like a rebel leader and more like a problem to be solved. Even his own crew eventually turned on him. In November 1718, his men removed him after he refused to attack a stronger French ship, John Rackham, known as Calico Jack. Rose after that split. That matters because pirate democracy could be ruthless. A captain who seemed too cautious could be removed. A captain who seemed too reckless could also be removed. The pardon created another pressure point. Is our captain leading us to profit or to the gallows? Is he brave or just doomed? Is he keeping us free or blocking our chance to live? Once those questions begin, Comcand rots. Calico Jack is another reminder that the pardon did not end piracy overnight. He received a pardon too. Then he returned to piracy in 1720 with Anne Bonny and Mary Red among his crew. That story has become famous because of the two women. But under the legend is the same pattern again: a paper pardon, a return to the old life, a short run, capture, trial, gallows for Rackham. Annie Bonny had another connection to the pardon world. Her husband John Bonny became an informant for Woodes Rogers. Imagine that little piece of Nassau gossip: a woman connected to pirates, a husband feeding information to the governor, a harbor where romance, betrayal, survival, and law all sit in the same room. This is where the story gets less fun than the costumes. The royal pardon turned human relationships into weapons. Friendship became risky, marriage became risky, crew loyalty became risky, even silence became risky. A pirate who wanted to surrender could not always say it openly, say it too early, and the hard men might call you a coward or traitor. Wait too long, and the governor might stop believing you. Tell the wrong friend and your plan spreads across the harbor before sunset. A pirate who refused the pardon had his own problem. He needed to know who would stand with him. But asking the question exposed him. If he says we sail tonight and one man at the table has already chosen Rogers, the plan is dead. A pirate who planned to take the pardon and later return to piracy had the worst problem. He had to fool everyone: the governor, the crew, the merchants, the old friends, the new enemies. He had to act respectable while keeping criminal options open. That kind of life creates stupid risks, and stupid risks got men hanged. Woodes Rogers understood that a pirate haven was not just ships. It was infrastructure. A pirate needed a harbor, food, water, repairs, piers, informants, fences, taverns, women, and men willing to trade stolen goods, small craft to move supplies, pilots who knew channels, locals who would keep quiet, officials who were too weak or too corrupt to interfere. Remove the haven and piracy becomes harder. But remove trust and piracy becomes lonely. That was Rogers' real victory. He did not kill every pirate. He made Nassau unsafe for pirates who wanted the old world back. The crown offered mercy with one hand and rewards with the other. The proclamation did not only promise pardon, it also offered money for catching pirates who refused to surrender. It even encouraged crewmen to seize commanders. That is vicious. The king was not merely telling pirates to quit. He was telling lower men on pirate ships that the captain could become a payday. Think about that on a deck at night. Your captain gives orders. You look at him and remember that the crown put money on commanders. Maybe 200 pounds for a commander. That is a fortune to an ordinary sailor. Now the captain is not just your leader. He is a reward. That single idea can destroy discipline. Pirate captains already ruled by consent more than naval captains did. They needed crew approval outside battle. They could be voted out. They depended on shared profit. Now the crown adds a new option. Do not just remove him, lever him. That is not mercy. That is a wedge driven straight into the planks of the ship. And it worked because the pirates were tired. By 1718, the Great Surge after Queen Anne War had reached a breaking point. The Atlantic had more naval pressure, colonial pressure, merchant pressure. Governors who once looked weak started coordinating. Trials became more common. Hangings became warnings. Ports became less friendly. The old fantasy of endless prizes was collapsing. A smart pirate could see it. A dumb pirate could feel it. A drunk pirate could deny it until morning. This is why the pardon did not land equally on every man. A young sailor with no wife and no property might say no. An older sailor with scars and fever might say yes. A captain with reputation might refuse because surrender meant humiliation. A low-ranking crewman might accept because he had no legend to defend. A man with hidden loot might accept because he could afford peace. A broke man might return to piracy because peace without money is just hunger. Rogers needed former pirates. But every former pirate was a risk. He needed men like Hornigold to hunt. But men like Hornigold could be hated by their old friends. He needed to show mercy, but he also needed executions. He needed to rebuild Nassau, but without pirate money. Nassau became poorer. That is the ugly joke. Piracy had made Nassau busy. Ending piracy made Nassau lawful but weaker. A pirate town can look alive because stolen wealth moves fast. Remove the stolen wealth and you discover how little honest economy was underneath. So Rogers wins the battle and still suffers the cost. He restores authority. He rebuilds fortifications. He uses pardons. He uses former pirates. He suppresses the harbor. And later he ends up financially ruined. The man who helped break the pirate republic did not walk away into some clean victory parade. That makes the story feel real. History rarely ends with the right music. By 1720, the old Nassau pirate world was not completely gone. But it was broken. The boldest names were scattered. Some were dead. Some were hunted. Some were informants. Some were trying to become honest. Some had returned to crime and were waiting for the rope without admitting it. Blackbeard was dead by November 1718. Stede Bonnet was hanged in December 1718. Vane would be captured after shipwreck and hanged in Jamaica in 1721. Rackham would be hanged in Jamaica in 1720. Hornigold would die in a shipwreck. Rogers would keep fighting for order and solvency. The era did not end in one day. But Nassau was the hinge. Before Rogers, Nassau was a pirate base. After Rogers, Nassau became a test. Who are you when the king offers you a way out? That is the question the pardon forced every pirate to answer. And the answers were ugly. Some men were relieved. They walked forward. They signed. They bowed their heads. They became former pirates and hoped nobody asked too many questions. Some men were furious. They saw every surrendered man as a coward. They believed freedom was worth more than safety. They sailed out and dared the world to catch them. Some men were rotten in the middle. They took the king mercy with one hand and reached for stolen cargo with the other. The pardon exposed them all. It did not create greed, it revealed it. It did not create fear. It gave fear a legal shape. It did not create betrayal. It made betrayal profitable. That is why the royal pardon is one of the most underrated weapons used against pirates. A warship can blockade a harbor. A pardon can blockade the mind. Rogers did not need to make every pirate afraid of him. He needed pirates to become afraid of each other. The man beside you might want pardon. The man behind you might want bounty. The man ahead of you might already be an informant. The captain might be worth more delivered than followed. The quartermaster might be counting who refuses. The old friend from your last cruise might show up tomorrow with a legal commission and a crew of hunters. That changes everything. A pirate ship runs on more than sailcloth and powder. It runs on agreement. We divide the loot. We fight together. We do not steal from each other. We do not abandon each other without cause. We face the outside world together. The royal pardon attacked that agreement. Once a man can save himself alone. The crew is weaker. Once a man can profit by turning in another. The captain is weaker. Once a man can go legal and hunt the rest. The whole pirate world is weaker. And the saddest part for them is that many knew it. The hard men were not blind. They understood what surrender meant. They understood that Hornigold working for Rogers was not a small event. It was a signal. If a major pirate could switch sides, anyone could. That is why Vane had to perform defiance. The burning ship in Nassau harbor was not only an escape tactic. It was a message to every wavering man. Do not bend. But fire is not a plan. Rogers had a plan. The crown had a plan. The pardon had a deadline. The bounty had a price. The gallows had space. Vane had courage. But courage without a base becomes flight. And flight gets lonely. This is the lesson that hits hardest. Pirate freedom depended on places that were not free. It depended on weak colonies, stolen supplies, captured sailors, terrified merchants, enslaved labor economies around the Atlantic, corrupt trade networks, and war systems that trained violence then pretended to be shocked by it. When the empire finally focused on Nassau, the pirate dream could not survive as a dream. It had to become paperwork, deals, betrayals, trials, and names on warrants. That is the real death of the pirate republic. Not a single naval battle. A stack of pardons on a governor desk. A former pirate leading hunters through waters he once used to hide. A condemned man walking past the same harbor where he once felt untouchable. A tavern going quiet when the wrong person enters. A captain realizing his crew is doing math behind his back. And somewhere in Nassau one pirate hears the words again. The king will forgive you. At first it sounds impossible. Then it sounds tempting. Then it sounds dangerous. Because forgiveness from the crown was never just forgiveness. It was a knife placed on the table between old friends. Pick it up. Leave it there. Use it. Fear who else might reach first. That is how the pirates were broken from the inside. The Royal Navy killed them from the outside. Governors tried them in courts. Executioners finished the public work. But the pardon did something quieter and deeper. It turned trust into suspicion. It turned old comrades into witnesses. It turned pirate knowledge into government intelligence. It turned captains into rewards. It turned surrender into a survival strategy. And once that happened, the black flag was still terrifying to merchants, but inside the pirate world, no longer meant unity. The deal was simple. Take the pardon and live, refuse it and run. Break it and hang. For the pirates of Nassau, that deal ended more than crimes. It ended the belief that they were all in it together.